Think about how we talk about the 1900s. Commonly known events, or at least knowledge that the events happened. I'm sure we all have met someone who is interested in World War II. Hundreds of World War II YouTube channels is evidence of that. World War I, the Great Depression, the rise of fascism, Jim Crow, and the Cold War. All events in recent history that define our country's discourse, politics, and institutions. Recent history is modern discourse. World War I, an event so devastating that it left its mark into the 21st century, even if it was over 100 years ago. What events of common knowledge shaped the 1890s? It's absurd to think that everyone knew every detail about a topic, but most knew it happened. And maybe some things that disprove common thought. A quick overview of recent events that are either common knowledge or have an impact on Minnesota in the 1890s, starting with 1800 and moving towards 1890. First on our list is the Louisiana Purchase in 1803. Purchased from Napoleon of France, this acquired territory up to the headwaters of the Mississippi in Minnesota. The formation of the Illinois Territory in 1809, securing land north of the Mississippi River. In 1811, Henry Hastings Sibley is born. Sibley was influential to Minnesota frontier, the treaty with the Sioux in 1837, the formation of the Minnesota Territory, and eventually statehood. In 1824, 200 years ago from when I'm making this video, the Bureau of Indian Affairs is founded, defining reservations and forming treaties with native tribes. The Erie Canal is opened in 1825, connecting the Great Lakes and future Duluth to the Atlantic trade. In the late 1830s to early 1840s, the fur trade in Minnesota diminished greatly due to changes in fashion, an industrial shift in the economy of Minnesota. The Dred Scott decision started in lower courts in 1846, being decided by the Supreme Court in 1857. Though Scott lived in the free Wisconsin Territory for a period, he wasn't granted freedom. This decision loosely allowed slaves in free states until the 14th Amendment. According to James Swisshelm in her book Half a Century, there was a slave plantation owned by General Lowry in St. Cloud, Minnesota, which is now believed to be the grounds of Centricare Hospital. In 1858, the last battle between the Ojibwe and Dakota took place in Shakopee, Minnesota. Today, it sits beside an amusement park. Obviously, Minnesota earning statehood in 1858 with Henry Sibley as governor. The Civil War between 1861 and 1865. The Civil War sent Minnesota men to fight, die, and survive to share their stories. The Dakota War of 1862, which was a bloody conflict further displacing natives and fostering anger for years to come. The Homestead Act of 1862 brought more settlers to Minnesota, including my family around 1900. The township of Norwood was platted in 1872. This is a channel centered around Norwood after all. The Minnesota Census of 1880 approximates 780,000 people living in the state, rising to 1.3 million in 1890. Census data in 2020 approximates 5.7 million people living in Minnesota. There's my list. I know there's so much more that happened, but these are a few events that influenced and disproved things that people may have believed in 1890. Shine on, you crazy diamonds.